All right, so welcome to our session today. And what we're going to take a look at is the new features that are available now that you've gone to MapleWood Enterprise. So one of the things you'll notice right off the bat when you start using your MapleWood is that it's not horribly different. It looks exactly the same on the outset as it did in the MapleWood you had previously. Some of the features, though, have been enhanced, and we've been doing all of our development in the MapleWood Enterprise version, which is one of the main reasons that Upper Grand switched over, was because they wanted to take advantage of these new features, as we're not putting any of those new features in the system you were using before, otherwise known as MapleWood Legacy. So the MapleWood options, everything is still the same menu options, nothing's moved, but there are some new features that you may not be familiar with, and that's why we're holding this training session today. So one of the first things you're going to notice is the expanded, enhanced student search. When you go in to bring up a student record now, the search screen looks much different than it did before. You used to only be able to search on student's surname and not on the other parts of the student's name. Well, you can still search on student's surname the very way that you did before. So if I want to see all the students whose last name starts with B, I simply just need to go B. But the difference now that just takes a little getting used to is you either have to hit enter after the B, or you can click the search button. That refreshes the list and brings up the records. As you can see as well now, we show many more parts of the student's information on this screen. So it used to be you just saw their name and their status. Now you can see their middle name, their usual name. The status is still showing. This homeschool, that would have been something you would have been familiar with before as well. That would just show whether you are the homeschool, or it'll say no concurrent if the students are enrolled in another school at Upper Grand. Then we have their grades showing, their homeroom, and if you just scroll a little bit to the right, you'll see that their OEN is also showing. I'm sure you've got a question right off the bat because I happen to hover my mouse over one of these little students who have what we call an alternate name. So anyone who has an alternate name, that's that AKA column that's down beside the student status, this student does have an alternate name. All that means is that they go by another name or may have been registered under another name at another school. This isn't the name necessarily that's on their certificate, but it should be. It should always be the name that's on their certificate, but you use the alternate names to carry other names that are associated with that student. And I'll talk about that more when we look at the student record. So the reason those are showing is because I have lots of different options I can turn on and off with the search screen. If I don't want to see deleted students, that was one of the feedbacks we got from schools over the years, was that why do I have to see my deleted students in the list all the time? Well, if you don't want to see deleted students, and let me just see if I have one here. There's some deleted students. If I uncheck the deleted box, but remember you have to refresh the search, so I have to click search afterwards. If I don't have deleted check, those students no longer show up in my list. So now those students who had a status of deleted are not there. Or if you don't want to see the next year onlys, you can take that off as well. Now the aliases, which is that AKA column, which will only show, by the way, if you have students with aliases in your search. If there wasn't anybody who had an alias, then that column's totally not shown. And it's showing because up here at the top right, I have include alternate names, like name changes and aliases. If I take those off rather than on and I refresh my search, then that doesn't even show. Now what's neat about when I have aliases in the system, and I'm not sure if I have one here right now, but sometimes what happens is they may match on my B search because their alias has starts with a B, but maybe their name is actually Smith, but their alias is Brown Smith. Well, they would show up when I searched under B's because it matches on the alias. If you don't want it to do that, then again, uncheck the aliases and those won't show. So you can do a lot of additional things now within the filter. One other thing you can do is you can search on, instead of the surname, we could search on anybody whose other parts of their name start with a letter or match your string. So if I wanted to search on given name or usual name, one or the other, then I could do a search on B's, and again I have to always press enter or search, and now I'm getting all the students whose given name starts with B rather than surname starting with B. One of the other things you can do within here is you can also sort on any of these columns that are in the screen on the display. If I wanted to look at all my students with given name B, but I want them sorted by their grade or homeroom or OEN instead of their surname after the B, then I simply click on the grade descriptor at the top, and now they're all sorted. So I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11s, and 12s in this school. So it all depends on how you want to see the information. If you want to go back to surname, and now you can see it's still sorted on by grade within that. So lots of functionality and flexibility. The other thing I really like about it is it shows you down at the lower left how many students match your search criteria. So if you wanted to see, for instance, and here's a little trick, just your, let's say you were in the spring of next year and you want to see who are all my next year only students. Yes, you could go out and do an inquiry on that or something. You could also do it right here on the search screen. Show me all next year only students. And with Enterprise, instead of using an asterisk as a wildcard, you can use the %sign. And I want to say, so show me any surname and just next year only. Now I would get all those students who are my next year only students, and I have 7. So it's really very handy in doing quick analysis of just student records and how many students of this or that might I have. So some of the things you can do with it. Now I'm going to just go back and search on just my A students again. Oh, I don't want next year only. You'll see I caught myself. You have to watch what you've got checked there. So here I'm going to go into my first student here. And it's going to bring up their record. And the record looks pretty much the same as we've seen so far. A couple of new things that are on the record to point out is we have added some new tabs. So you might see that there's some, some additional tabs, and we'll talk about those momentarily and what new tab you'll see on your MapleWood. Some of the things over on the left that are different, the basic biographics and everything is the same, but if you happen to be a school that receives students from one of the other schools, so you have feeder students that come up to you from your school, then you will see the other schools button for sure. If you are an elementary school and you don't have a lot of students who happen to come to you from other schools, they've been in your school since the beginning, you may not see the other schools button. What that other schools button does for you over on the left-hand side, if I click on it, it shows me where else the student has been in upper grade. So if they've never been in any other school but yours, then you won't see another schools button. But as soon as, let's say, an elementary student goes to a secondary school, the secondary school will see where they were prior to coming to their school. So this would be the school that they last attended. So here I can even go in and I can see the student's record at that school. So over at Westside Public School, this student is now in past, and this is when they started, the retirement date when they left, and whether it's the home school. Well, in this case, that's not their home school because they're in past over there. And as you can see from this record, the home school is yes at the secondary, so that's the active school. If you want to see what's on file over there, you can see some basic information just by double-clicking on it, and it's like opening up the record that's in past at that school. Now, as you can see, you can't do anything. There's no edit capability or anything like that, but you could even see if this was a secondary to secondary, and we're going to talk about the history. You could see information over at that school. Now, the idea with the MapleWood Enterprise as well is what has happened, what has taken place over the last several months. that the central office people have been working very hard at is to synchronize and clean up all of the MapleWood records and eliminate the duplicate students that were at individual schools. Because you used to be separate little islands of MapleWood. So you were all little, each school was a little island of MapleWood. And when you go to MapleWood Enterprise, instead of all being separate islands, you are instead one big mega city, you could look at it, I guess, as an analogy. And every student record is in the big database. So it's now no longer separate islands, it's one student record in the whole division. So the division is one database now, and you just move the student wherever the student needs to be enrolled. So it's a much easier process when it comes time to retire students from elementary and enroll them into secondary. You don't have to make the file anymore, and we can take a look at that a little bit later on as we go. But the idea is that it's one student record across the division. So here we're just taking a peek at, even though they have a record on file over at that school, your record and their record is essentially the same record. So it's one student, this Rufero, Jessica, who, if she was to enroll at another school, would only one of you can own the student and claim the student, and that's where the whole homeschool thing comes into, and we'll get into that as we go along. But the main thing to keep in mind is that it's one student record in the whole system now. So with that being said, if your student has transferred, you'll have an Other Schools button. If your student has always just been at your school, nowhere else in the division, you won't have an Other Schools button. So here on the Biographics tab, not a whole lot that's new or different that you can do on the Biographics. There is one exciting new feature, though, that a lot of schools that I go out and do training really like, and that has to do with the flags. The flags now, it used to be you could only set one flag per student. Well, now you can set several flags on a student. So if I want to set the flag, again, you go up to the flag there. My student already has a flag, but if I want to change it up at the top right, then I just click on it. I can see all the flags that have been set up in my school, and this is just training data, so bear with me. Some of the things get a little, well, silly, for instance. So if my student had an EpiPen and they were on a roll, if I hold down the Control key, I can select both EpiPen and Honor Roll. You couldn't do that before with the MapleWood you had prior to going Enterprise. So now you just multi-click on the ones you want, holding down the Control key. So EpiPen, holding down the Control key, Honor Roll, and I say OK. Now one of the things it does, you'll notice, is it makes it a rainbow colored flag. And the reason being is because one was green and one was blue or whatever. So it doesn't know what color to make the flag, so it makes it multicolored. And if you want to know what that student has, if you just hover your mouse over the flag, a little pop-up will come up to show you Honor Roll, comma, EpiPen. It also shows as well in the status line down at the lower left underneath the Step to Another Student. You'll see down there it shows Honor Roll and EpiPen as well. And if you forget, then you can just click on the flag, and these are shadowed in to show you what ones are selected. So that's how you can multi-select. You just hold down the Control key and choose as many as you want. All right, the other thing on the Biographics tab that has been enhanced is the Name button. So a moment ago when we were looking at the student searching, we were seeing how the name, we could have aliases on students. So that's where you enter those aliases, is in the name. So here we can see that this student does have an alias, and it is the, again, just to reinforce, the surname, given name, middle name, all that on the student record should match what the student's ID shows, their identification or what you're using as proof of identity. So that should match with the legal. But if you want to say they also may have been enrolled or known as this alias, then you can simply go to the aliases tab over on the right, click add, and this is where you would enter the alias name. So again, it just helps when you go to do searching, because the searching will find your student match on the alias if you check the little box at the upper right, or it'll match on the surname field. So that's really the reason why you would even bother to put aliases in, is because you wanted them to match on that. So still you can use the usual name feature. That's not any different. You don't have to make an alias just because they go by a nickname. That's the reason for your usual name. One of the other features with the name change, and this could come up over the course of a year, is possibly the student legally changes their name. And when a student legally changes their name now, we track automatically for you in your MapleWood the name changes. So the surname, if this student officially on record changed her birth certificate legal surname, and we see here it's been done 3 times on this student. Maybe I'll go to another student and do it for you. So let me just step to another student and see if this one is a little bit cleaner. Let's go to the name tab here. Okay, so this one is cleaner. There's no name changes on this. So this will illustrate my point nicely. If Devin actually changes his legal name to Smith-Alford, and makes it a joint name, and that's now his new legal name. If I change this and I say OK, what it will do is it will automatically take you back to the search screen. So it was under Smith, and you'll see from here there's also Smith-Alford. Now if I just, let me just cancel it here a second and go back to that student. So here I'll go to Smith. So there he is. Now his name has been changed. He doesn't have a last name of Alfred anymore. But if I go to the name button, what I want you to see is we tracked the name change. So by just saving your changes, going, like it'll close the record and you bring it back up again, and it shows the date and time that you legally changed their names. So they went from Alfred to Smith-Alfred on that date. When it comes to onsets reporting and everything like that, we'll do all of the updates and that behind the scenes, because we look for those name changes if they exist. So that's how you would change it if a student legally changed their name, and it's all tracked for you to see when that was done. But again, you would only ever do that if they legally changed their documentation. All right, so that's the things that you'll see right off on another, on the Biographics tab. Let's take a look at some of the things you'll see on the Family Contacts tab. This is one of the tabs that's probably changed the most. So here on the Family Contacts tab, it still looks very much the same until you go in and edit it. So now, when you edit the Family Contacts tab, you will have additional tabs, or can make additional tabs associated with the student. It used to be, in the MapleWood you had, that you were limited to the 5 tabs of student, father, mother, guardian, and permanent address. Now you can add other contacts to the student record. So we see here I've added an emergency contact and a doctor. If this student had a step-parent or grandparents who were contacts as well, then you simply need to just go to Add Contact down at the bottom left, and you can choose from the list. Now this list is set up through the central office people, and if you ever need to have something appear in the list that doesn't appear in the list, so for instance, I don't have stepmother, stepfather in my list, contact your support personnel at Upper Graham, and let them know the contact that you need to have added to the table. They'll let you know if and when it's been added. And then once it's added to the table, you as the school can come in and pick the tab. So if a grandparent was involved with this student, maybe they go there part-time after school, then I can now add a grandparent tab and I can fill in all the information about the grandparent. So whether they live with the student or not, and you can see that we can say who they live with even. So if they live with the mother only and everybody has a different house or something, and maybe the grandparent lives with the mother, I can make it match the mother or any of the other tabs. You can fill in all the details about the grandparent on this tab. So just stepping back a moment, we see here it's still the same student tab. You still treat it the same way as you did before. The father tab hasn't changed a lot. There's a few things I'm going to talk about momentarily. But everything about these people, the different tabs, should contain the information about that person. Now, one of the things we have added are a couple of little checkboxes to the individual tabs. Everybody has little checkboxes, and that's whether this is an emergency contact or even a school closure contact. So what you can add to your records now is you can go through to a new level of detail and even specify on the various tabs who is the emergency contact and the order of that emergency contact on the student's record, or in terms of who you should contact first. So here, if I wanted the emergency contact, a third person, to be the first contact, then I just click the emergency contact as shown here. They are the first person, so their order is number 1. But let's say I want to change that, and I actually want to make mom number 1 and the emergency contact number 2. Like, oh, I can go back, but what I would probably do is if this was the only one and it said 1, I would go to mother, for instance, and I would say make mother number, and now she's the third because I had 2. I don't know which 2 it is yet, but I'll find out as we look through the records. If I want to change the order of mom, and mom is number 1, so here's what it said. Contact mom will move the emergency contact to be 2, from 1 to 2, okay? And contact mom will change the father from 2 to 3. So he was the one before who was number 2, and he's going to go to number 3. So now we've got mom is 1, emergency contact is 2, and father is now 3. But if I want to change even that, you can get really specific with this. If I'm like, no, father's number 2, because he had it checked before, we just didn't notice that. So now if I change him to 2, that'll say it's going to change emergency contact to 3. And that's what I would want. The benefit of doing this is you can actually print reports now and say, pull me the first emergency contact, their name, their phone number, then pull me the second emergency contact, their name, their phone number. So you can actually generate lists with all of the different emergency contacts, who would be a different order on every different student possibly.
Can I just stop for a second?
Oh, of course. Do you have a question?
The office coordinator or the office manager wanted to generate a report for the classroom. So specific to the classroom, and she wanted to have emergency order contacts that fit for every student. So first, second, and third.
Yep.
Is that a possibility, or does she have to generate a report the first priority only, and then second report, second priority only?
No, now you can do it all in the one report. So you could change up if you happen to have, let's say for instance, the school has and so the question was, do I have to have a separate report for each emergency contact? Then you don't anymore. You can make your own custom report, and on that report, or you can modify an existing report you may have, and we've changed the tree a little bit in Report Builder, so we'll show that in a little bit. But you can actually say that for this student, and then you could have 3 separate new lines on that same report that would show, okay, show me the first emergency contact's name and phone number, and then below that in the same report another line that said second emergency contact name and number, and below that a third emergency contact name and phone number.
I have one more question for you.
Certainly.
In terms of the order of emergency contact priority, is it listed in numerical order? But when we look at it, when we change that, are the contacts listed in that numerical order? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the question is that are they listed in that order? You actually get to control the order when you put the fields in. So you actually in the tree, and it'll probably make more sense when we go and show the report builder tree, and I'll be sure to do that. You actually can say show me first or third or whichever one you want. You pick the order. So it's almost like an additional, like if I were to say show me emergency contact name, and then you get to say first, second, or third is how you get to do it. So you most likely, as I say, they've used the 3 or 4 fields and they do first, second, third, fourth in that order. But if the flexibility is there that you could eliminate 1 and 2 and show just 3 if you wanted to. No problem, and please feel free to ask questions as we go. The school closure contact box is a separate box that if you wanted to, and again, back to the idea of a report, you wanted to just print the school closure contact, then whoever has the box checked for school closure contact will be the name that would be printed. So in the tree, in the report builder tree, you could call up the field school closure contact and it will print their name and number. Now you can only have one school closure contact, so only one person on the tabs can be the school closure contact. If I was to go over to, I'm on the father right now, if I was to go to grandparent and say that they were the school closure contact, oh look, they've enhanced it. I didn't think that would do that. So you can have 2. It used to be that you could only have the 1. It wouldn't let you have the 2.
I'm happy to hear that because I actually was at a school once where the school shut down and there was such a large field that the teacher was responsible for contacting school closure contacts.
Right.
So that those reports were so valuable, and it wasn't necessarily emergency, it was school closure.
That's right, and that's why we put it in as this is also the person who is the school closure contact. So you use those as separate to the emergency. Don't feel that they're tied to it in any way because it doesn't have to be. I could go to somebody who wasn't even an emergency contact like grandparent and I could make them the school closure contact even though they're not an emergency contact. And again, the idea being, and you've already put that together, is that now I can report with even more level of detail than I could before. So that's how you use the new fields on the biographics, or pardon me, the family contacts. So you can, again, you can add your contacts. If someone is no longer the contact and you want to remove that person as a contact, maybe from year to year, a family may change who their contacts are. You can also delete a contact. So it says, do you want to permanently delete the grandparent tab? And now it's gone. So that's how you remove a contact. As you can see, you can't delete any of the core contacts. So student, there's no delete. Father, there's no delete. Mother, guardian, permanent. It's these additional ones that you add yourself that can be deleted. Alrighty, any further questions on that? All right, so moving on, again, okay to save your changes, cancel, does not save your changes. So I didn't bother to save my 1, 2, 3 contacts on there that I just did. Siblings, it still acts in the same way, but one of the things we've enhanced with regards to when a student has a sibling, okay, here's Samantha and Davin are siblings with one another. I just want to quickly show you how when you do update information and there is a sibling, so here you can see that this screen looks a little bit different than the one we looked at before because he didn't have a sibling. Now we have little 1s, it could be little 2s beside the different tabs. What that indicates to the office is that that information, that tab, is shared with the sibling. So when you update the information on that tab, it's going to come back and ask you, do you want to update the sibling as well? So you can pick and choose. Even if I had multiple siblings and I It'll actually even show me the list of who, and I can pick who do I want to update the same information on the sibling. So here, if I was to say that Patrick was an emergency contact and I make a change like that, or I change his address, because he's shared with the sibling, indicative by the number in the brackets, when I go OK, it comes up. And you have to really, the schools need to begin to read these messages a little bit more, because it's going to tell me exactly what it's going to do. It says Samantha Smith's father is shared with the following siblings, Gavin. A check mark means that the changes will be automatically applied for the sibling. No check mark means the change will not be applied. And sometimes we'll even say which field it is, and if you change several fields, you'll have this screen pop up over and over so that you can pick and choose what you want to share. Now, some of them may find that annoying, but it's for the benefit of situations when, oh, they don't live together, so I don't want to make Davin's father the emergency on Davin. I just want to make it on Samantha, right? So you can choose to update Davin's record as well, which would be the emergency information, or not, by checking or unchecking. And if I do update to Davin, then now Davin's been updated, and if I went to Davin's record, I'd see that the father was the emergency tab over, the emergency contact over there as well. So if I was in and I changed several things in the family contacts and that information was shared with Davin, that window would pop up repeatedly until I've selected through to apply or not apply the changes to Davin. It's just to give a new level of flexibility. All right, so that's the other thing that is connected with the Family Contacts tab. So you can have multiple new contacts on the student, and you can also share the information, a little more flexibility in that on the other contacts linked by sibling. All right, so the next tab that changed a little bit was the emergency tab. On there, the display is a little bit different, as you can see. Even in the elementary school, the display is a little bit different with the sitter information that shows up on the emergency tab. So what this is doing for me is if I look on Samantha, it is actually showing me the emergency contacts. So not only can you do that in a report, you can also get that information just from looking at the emergency tab. In addition to that, if I just go back to the biographics for a second, you'll also see the emergency contacts listed in order on the emergency section down at the bottom on the biographics. So Aaron Harris is the first emergency contact, Patrick Sarka is the second, and that would be the doctor information that's showing there as well. So the doctor tab always shows up on the biographics as well. So by putting in that flexibility and naming the people and numbering them, you've carried it right through to the biographics tab at the lower left. When you go in and you edit your emergency tab, so here if I was to edit the emergency tab, it does look a little bit different. We still have the emergency notes, but I'll point out the emergency notes because in my experience, a lot of people don't realize this little feature about the emergency notes, which has been there all along, is if you put in any health situations or emergency type information that you'd want anybody to see at a glance. So let's say, oh, let's just do the standard old allergy to peanuts and coconut or something like that, whatever. Coconut, it's too early. So now if I save that, the emergency note always shows up on the biographics. So those who may not have realized that, a new little tip for you, which again has always been there, the emergency notes, if you enter them, always show up back on the biographics tab. It's these medical notes that don't show up back on the biographics tab. So you can still use them, but know that that's what is neat about the emergency note. Now back to what I was going to show you as well with the contacts. Here, the emergency contact is the first contact. So we see that, and then there's the father, and then there's the doctor. Well, if I needed to edit any of this information, then if I go edit contact, it actually takes me back to the very same screen that we saw a moment ago with the family contact information. So if you need to update the emergency information, you can do that, or any of the tabs, you can do that through family contacts. So here, if I put in the employer of the emergency contact, or the more information I fill in, maybe I put in a, let's put in a cell phone number. Oh, my numlock's not on. There we go. And I save this. Again, it's asking me, do I want to update the emergency contact that's shared with the following siblings? And I'll say okay. And now it shows a cell phone number. So again, to edit your contact, you just go in and it takes you right back to the same screen. So you could have done that in the family contacts, or you could have done that by going through the emergency. Either way, same thing. Anybody who is flagged as being the emergency contact and has the number would additionally show here. So again, just to illustrate, I'm sure you can see how that'll work. If I make mother an emergency contact and I save that and I say sure, apply it to Gavin, now we see that on my emergency tab that has expanded to also include mother because she's in there too now. Doctor comes by default. And if I go back, look how I've even got emergency father, mother now, and in the order that they're specified. So again, you can change the order numbering, and there they all are back on the emergency tab. So there's my note. Aaron's the first, then Patrick, then Margaret's the third. So it all comes together. So that's how you can use the emergency tab. For the elementary schools, when you go into the elementary, the sitter information, that's just another tab. So if they have the sitter information, it'll still display here on the emergency, but when you went in to edit it, you'll actually see that the sitter will have their own tab, just like the doctor does. And again, it's always been my philosophy as well that I point out, the more information you enter or track, so with these new fields, if you go through and you update your records to include some of this information that we've added since you've gone to MapleWood Enterprise, the more you're going to be able to pull out and report from your MapleWood and include that information in your various reports. All right. So another feature, I'm just going to hold off on the history bit because that has to do with just secondary schools. Let's take a look at what you can now do through your reports and through your inquiries. So I'm just going to, just bear with me a second. I'm going to just pause the recording for just a moment. So thank you there. Well, we took a brief interruption while we checked on some background information. So where we left off, that was pretty much all of the features on the student record per se. What I want to take a look at now as well is the features that you can get to within reports. So your inquiries did not come across with the MapleWood. I'm sure you guys may be going to save some of the standard ones, but any inquiries will have to be rebuilt. So that's a possibility. You may have to build new inquiries again, but all of your reports are still there. So you didn't lose any of your reports and such, but you may have to make the inquiry again that you used to have, maybe to find all the students who had 5 or more absences, that sort of thing. Then once you build it once, it'll be there again for you. So here with Report Builder, nothing drastically changed within reports for printing or reports for exporting. But what I want to show you that did change is there are some features to the tree that made the tree a little bit different. And I have found that some schools now, they go to try to find things that they want to pull into the report, like those emergency contacts, and they're not sure where to navigate in the tree to do that. So let's take a look at, let's go into reports for printing. The same tree is in reports for exporting, depending on which one you prefer to use. So if I wanted to build myself a report, and I wanted to put in that report my new pulling of information based on contact number. Then what I would do is I would put in my new body field, so the blue one, and I would probably, if I'm going to pull a name or something, maybe I'd make it a little bigger. And for those who aren't familiar with Report Builder, unfortunately, I am kind of glossing over how you use Report Builder because this is to show the new features, not a lesson on how to build reports. So with the body fields, the blue ones, if I want to pull those emergency contacts, I just double click and I get my tree. From the outset, it looks pretty familiar and similar. It's when you get down in through the tree that some of those new tabs and contacts that we've added is where the flexibility in pulling that comes from. So that would be under personal, and I'm just double clicking. And it would be under possibly student contacts. So here, instead of going to father or going to mother like you did before, you go to student contacts, which you can envision as all of those different titles, tabs rather. So from here, if I wanted to pull the emergency contact, or let's say the name, and I'm going to get it kind of, you do it in a different level. So I'm going to pull the surname, and what comes up next is I get to choose whose surname do I want to pull. So it used to be you'd go to father and then father's surname. Well, now you go to surname, and you can say I want to pull whoever from the tab. So you pick and choose which tab am I pulling. And if you wanted to do father, mother, and in that order, so you'd say father, and okay. So that would pull the father's name. And if I wanted another one, then I could pull, let's say, I'd make up the whole sheet. So I got father's name, mother's name, but then I get down a little bit on my sheet, and now I want to pull those emergency contacts. Well, you would still go to personal, and you'd go to student contacts, but again, I want the surname, and I want it based on the emergency contact order. So not the contact type, not the tab, but I want to pull that order that we looked at before. So I want to pull the contact surname of the first contact, the second, the third, and you choose which one do you want. So you could have a little label here beside this that would say, and I'm just going to keep this simple, emerge number 1. And then below that you'd have number 2's contact. And if I wanted the phone number field or the given name, put another one in, but I think you can start to see how this is going to come together. Beside the number 1, I get the number 1 surname, and then I want their phone number. So it's under personal, go to student contacts, and then I want their, maybe it's their cell phone number, and that's under the other contact fields. And their cell phone number. And again, I'd pick the emergency order, the first contact cell phone number, whoever that happens to be, and then I pick a format. So now I've got emergencies 1, their name, and their cell phone number. And then underneath that I could do 2 and their cell phone number, 3 and their cell phone number, whereas up here in the top part I could pull father, mother, and emergency based on the tab name. Now in the lower part I'm pulling based on the emergency contact order. So that's how it all comes together, and that's how you use the tree to find those people's information. So that's what's different. You go to student contacts. If I was to go to emergency contact, then this is saying, okay, pull me whoever is the emergency contact, the tab that's labeled emergency contact, and I pull their information. So it's a little bit different than it was before. You get to say, when you go to the next level, who do I want to pull? The contact type, the contact number, the contact order. It's up to you. All right, so that's what's different. And you may have to revise some of your existing reports to grab that information a little bit better than before. So you may have to tweak some of your reports and update that they pull the right field that you want it to pull. So that's what's new with the report builder. And unfortunately, I still can't get in to show you the inquiry at the moment. Inquiry is not any different. You still build inquiries the same way. But one of the things that you can do with inquiry is central office can now create inquiries at the central office level. So the idea being is that the board office can create an inquiry that might go out and ask for, show me all the students who have 10 or more absences so far this year. And they can share that inquiry with the schools. So the schools have a new, when they go to open inquiries, they can select, is it a central office inquiry or is it my own personal inquiry? So that's how that works with the inquiry. I'm just going to see, I don't think I can get in to your, no, I'm still denied. So unfortunately, I can't show inquiries within this video, but they aren't any different than they used to be. If it comes up here in the next few minutes, I'll add it to the session. Now the next part, oh, I did forget one thing on the student record before I move on to secondary schools and substitutions. If I go into a student record, a couple of the new tabs that are available, if this one's not a new tab, but it has a new flexibility to it, the Custom Fields tab. So what you see here on the Custom Fields tab is we now show, and I think this was the way it was before, there's the text fields, and then if you scroll down, there's the list fields. So one of the things that is available now with custom fields is there are central office custom fields and there are school custom fields. What I mean by central office custom fields, and those are the ones that have a C beside them as opposed to the S, which are school ones. The C ones can be set up by your division office because they want to collect this information across all schools. And that's the idea of them setting it up in central office, is to standardize it a little bit. And you'll see any that they've set up, and that'll be, as I say, indicated with a C. And they automatically push out to the schools. The school ones are still there. You can still create your own school list and text fields. And if I want to fill in the fields now, I just go in and I edit my custom fields. All of them together. So if I look down a little bit, I think one of the ones there we go to 13, 14. One of the ones was dentist name was a board one. Just looking, sorry, I must have missed it. Dentist name. There it is, down at the bottom. So dentist name, and you'll see when you click on that field, up at the top right, it says it's centrally defined. Centrally defined fields, the school can't change the title or the length of the field or anything like that. Only central office can change it. But of course, you can use the field to enter your information. So yes, you could put the dentist name in here. But you could also, if this was a live school, I might suggest to them that you could have the contact type that was dentist. And you could put in the dentist with their own information on their tab. So you can still use the field, it's just that it's centrally defined, so you can't change its label, dentist name. And permission for photo, I think, was another one. So that's just a yes or no field by clicking or not clicking, and then you save your changes. So if it's an S, it means the school made up the field, and they can then make changes to its label or what you want to type in there, but central office fields, they can't change. All right, so that's what's new with list and text fields. Another thing that's new is the SAL tab. Actually, I think you had the SAL tab before, didn't you? Right, that's not new. That came out for all schools. So the SAL tab, pardon me, that's not new at all. And even though I see multimedia tab, that is a new feature, but I know Upper Grand isn't going to be using that right away. It's something they're going to add on in a little bit after they think about how they want to use it. The Assessments tab, that's a new feature with, I believe, in MapleWood. Did you see that before?
No, we did not.
What that'll be able to be used for, and it's something that has to be set up through central office, these could be your scores for centralized tests. So any provincial tests, like for instance the OSSS, I can't say it, the literacy test, that could be tracked in here with their actual score if you wanted to. Now the schools can only see the information on the Assessments tab. The central office does the whole setup and puts the tests in that they want to track. But one of the things that through the Connect Ed, the schools can, the teachers, if it was a provincial test that teachers scored, they can put the scores in through the Connect Ed. So the central office, the idea being that central office sets up the provincial tests or standardized tests. The office can see them. Teachers, if you give them the permissions, can put the scores in for the test for the students in their homerooms or classes. So this is where you would see the test and you would then see the information below, and it would be all the scores for that student and any test that that student wrote. So that's what can show on the Assessments tab. Now the next thing that I'll show you is this won't come into place for about a year from now for your schools because it's not a grandfathered thing. It will, when you transfer to New Year for the 14-15 school year, this is where you'll start to see the historical attendance and historical achievement be tracked. So you used to not be able to see the previous year's attendance or the previous year's marks, meaning report card marks. So here I'm on a secondary school, but even on an elementary school, they will have this new previous year's button, but again, it won't be there until you transfer next summer. So it only works from the moment you go enterprise onwards. You'll be able to go to, in a year from now, the previous years, and you'll be able to see the attendance history, the attendance details for that school year. And so in essence, what this would show you would be that school year you'd see the period attendance just like you see the register. Or if it was at the elementary school, you could see the homeroom attendance for morning and afternoon, and it would be all the days that the student missed school. So we won't show you the days specifically that they were in attendance, but we will show you all the days that they were not at school or they were late. So you can go to the attendance details. You'll be able to choose, when you're in September of 2014, you'll be able to choose the 13-14 year and see that historical attendance.
So are you suggesting then that in 6 years' time, you look back to the beginning, look back and see all of those years, 2 years of attendance?
That's right. That's what you'll be able to do. So starting from this year forward, you'll be able, it will accumulate and it will add each transfer to New Year's historical information. So you'll be able to come in here and you'll be able to see the attendance details throughout every of the various years back until it'll start in the 13-14 will be your first. So you'll see all the other years. So just as you said, in 6 years from now, you'll have 6 various ones to choose from. Yeah. So it won't be necessary to have those CUME files on record because you'll be able, or to have the printed registers in the OSRs because you'll be able to view it online. Okay. So the next bit applies to just the secondary schools. The secondary schools, when it comes to doing a student's history now, is you don't have to create different codes all the time when you have courses that you want to count as something other than the category that it would originally be intended for. So an English, that's not going to count as an English. So here on the History tab, I'm going to just expand this. We also expanded the information that shows on the History tab. So your schools might like maximizing the student's record now so they see more of the information at a time. Here are all of my historical information and the category group that it's counting for. So one of the things that it will be suggested, I think, to the secondary schools is they may have to go through and check that the categories are right. So over time, it could be that your categories, because of the so many codes issue, there could be some issues with the categories. Don't be alarmed. It can easily be adjusted. And it will only come into play probably with courses they earned at other schools. So if you have students who earn credits at other schools, then you should be able, you might want to double check that they're counting the way you want. And if they're not, then you can easily fix it by editing the student's history. You can then edit the individual course. So you'll see that over here we can see what everything is counting for. There's a lot of new columns there. So the SHSM is displayed on there, the dual credits, all of it's all displayed. And if I needed to, here's a PLE. If I needed to change a PLE, well, let's come back to that. Maybe I want to change this MPM2D. Maybe I don't want it to count as the standard math. Then you edit the entry, and this screen is expanded now to allow for more flexibility. So here I have your date and month, the course code that we're using, the rest of it is all popping in, whether it was a PLAR or not, I can fill in. If it was a previous school, that's still available. But one of the things I can do now that you weren't able to do before is substitutions are much easier. You don't have to make all these new codes in your code file. If I want to change this just for this one student that it doesn't count towards the category of mathematics, so here in the table you see what it's picking up from your codes table, and it's because it's set to automatically determine. If I uncheck that, then I can come down and check the different values required than the defaults. And this is where I could change any of the defaults, but it only will change it for this one student, James. So it's not changing it in the codes table, it's just changing it for James. So maybe I could change, let's keep it simple. I could change the category. So as long as someone has said it could count towards a math or a science, so I can say that it's going to count as science instead. And I can say that instead of it being regular, maybe he did it as an e-learning. So you can change any of these fields, even the attempted credit. So if you have a course that, I don't know, for some reason he got 2 credits instead of the standard 1, this would change it just for James, not in your table. Then when I save it, and I'm not sure if I have this math and science set up right, I probably needed to say both of them could apply. Oh, this is where I do the science. And I say OK. It may not let me. Oh, I think it did. There it goes. And so it's going to count as a science instead of a math. It overrode it. But it only overrode it for James. All right? And then back here, it'll recalculate. And now, if his science hadn't been fulfilled, it is now. Okay? So that's what it's done. And I can even see here, there's my math that I changed to a science. So that's how you can handle substitutions now without having to go to the codes file and put all of those in. Do make sure, do a double check over the next several weeks. There's not a crisis or anything. Just go through. Make sure if they were earned at another school, possibly, that the proper category is counting. And if it's not, or if you run into any complications, your support people are there to give you a hand with how to change it. One of the really nice features with the change of going to Enterprise, it comes back to what I was saying before about the one student record. And as long as, let's say, a student takes a course over at another school, even though that's not their home school, they're taking the course over there, then that student, would they update the history over at school B and your school A, it's one student record. So you don't have to enter the history records that have been earned over at the other school, because they're in essence updating the same history. So when they update the history with the course and the mark that they took at their school, when that's done, you'll also be able to see that same entry on the student's history. And it will say that it's at the other school because you are the holder of the OSR. So that's how they can update their own courses that they take at their school, whereas you as the home school, you can update the rest. So they won't be able to edit the other records because they're not the home school. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, one of the things, I'm going to see if I can find somebody, and the elementary schools aren't going to see this as much as the secondary schools. Let's go to Aaron here for a minute instead. Aaron's only in grade 7, so that's not going to work. Let's go to, do I have a concurrent student who's in high school? This student is. Now this will illustrate a couple of things. He's deleted at my school, but see how I'm not the home school? It says no. If you are not the home school and you want to know who is the home school, if you go to the other schools tab, Mount Royal is actually where the home school is. So one thing about the idea, and this is for elementary and secondary schools, if you do have a student who's shared between the two of you, only one of you can own the student record. So this would be a situation that Mount Royal is actually where the student's record lives. So whoever holds the OSR is considered the main school or the home school. Adam can take a course over at my school, but I can't change a lot of information about Adam's record because I don't own the OSR. I can only put in on his timetable the classes he's taking. I can add the classes he's taking to his history when he completes it. But when let's say I go to his biographics, the family contacts, let's go to that one. On the family contacts tab, I don't have an edit button here. And that's because I don't own the record. I can't change his contact information because he's not my full-time student. If his name or anything has to be changed or his contact phone numbers have to be changed, I would have to either tell the family to advise the homeschool or I would have to pass that information along to the homeschool. But what's great about it is now you're like, well, I don't know where Adam's homeschool is. Go to the other schools button and you'll see where the homeschool is. It probably won't happen much right now. It could happen a little bit, but you're going to see more instances of this next spring. When the high schools start to do the scheduling and they start to enroll the students who are their feeder students, and they're putting those students in as next year only students, they'll be able to still see who is the homeschool, where are they coming up from. When the homeschool retires those students, who will stay this year only at the elementary school, when the retirement date hits, let's say it's the end of June, no, actually, I'm in Ontario, it's July 1st. So when July 1st hits, the new school that they're moving into, the secondary school, will actually take ownership of the record. So it's all based around enrollment dates and retirement dates. So they'll own the record as soon as they are released from the homeschool. What you might see right now, and this is a possibility, you may have some students who are enrolled in your school or they show up at your school, and it may come up when you add them in that they are homeschool no. And that's because somebody else is still holding the OSR. They haven't retired the student from their school. So when you go to enroll a student at your school, yours is going to say, oh, it's a concurrent student. And you can use the other school's record to call the other school and go, hey, Adam showed up on my doorstep for registration this year. he wants to go to school here, you have to release him or retire him from your school before I can add him full-time into my school and take control of the record. So only one of you now can claim the student is the whole gist of it. Any questions at all on that? Yeah, so we can talk about that, Pam. But that's one of the things that the schools might be contacting you about is releasing students. So we'll save that and talk about that more.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the things when the schools do the mass transfer, and I know you were saying to me before, you've done some of the transferring, enroll students from this board for the schools, that sort of thing. I think Vanessa made mention you've been doing some of that. One of the nice things about with being Enterprise now is they don't have to make the file next spring. So I'm not going to go into it in detail, but the idea being because it's one student record, the sending school next spring just has to say which school are the students going to. The receiving school goes in and goes to transfer and enroll students from this board. And that will, by default, pick up all the students that have been set to them as the destination school. And they can enroll them as next year only students at their school. Now, if a student doesn't show up, that's fine. They just make them as a no-show like you always did, and the school where they are showing up is the one who actively enrolls them. So that's no problem. But it's a lot simpler process. You don't have to make the files anymore to copy the students for another school. It's all done in the database now, and they see it, and it's based on the destination school. So that'll really come into play when you start working in scheduling next year. But one of the new things I wanted to show you is if a school has someone who walks in as a brand new student, and they show up at their doorstep, and this could be a kindergarten student or even a high school student. If they go in to add new student, what I'm going to do, I don't have a student right off the bat. I'm going to, oh, that's my central office. I'll hold that thought. I'm going to pick somebody from elementary school. So I'm in my high school, and I'm going to go to my elementary school for a second because I don't have a student name. So I want to pick somebody who's coming up from elementary school or who shows up on my doorstep and they're enrolled at another school. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find somebody here. Let's enroll somebody who's not already concurrent. Let's take this Jessica Adams, Jessica Allery. So Jessica shows up at the secondary school. So let me just keep track of what Jessica's information here is. Let me write this down so that we can do a real scenario. So Allery, Jessica, and her OEN number. 398, and let's get her birth date. Okay, so I'm going to close, well, I won't close her record completely because I may still need it. So over at the secondary school now, let's say Jessica shows up at the secondary school, and maybe she's been gone from Upper Grand for a couple of years and she's moved back. So they come in, they have no idea that she has ever been in Upper Grand. She doesn't tell them that when she registers. So they go to students, add new students, and they start filling in her basic information with her registration form. So Allery, Jessica, maybe they know her OEN number, maybe they don't. I'm going to say that they do. She happens to remember it. And they put in her date of birth, based again on her registration form. And they say she's female, she's starting school with us now in September, so maybe she's starting grade 9. We'll put her entry to secondary school this fall. Her entry date to this school is also going to be this fall because she's doing grade 9. We say she's coming in from another school, another board. So elementary, other board from what she tells us. And we're going to put her in grade 9. And then we're going to go okay. Oh, it failed. So my number's not valid. But let's go like this. Oh, I got to change her because my calendar's still sitting on the spring. Don't worry, I'm going to make her next year only. I don't want to enter a date for the board date. So now what happens is with the idea of being one student record, when you put in a student and it matches on their name, birthday, gender, OEN number, if I put it in, it goes out and it finds all the possible matches that there might be. And it found a hit. So it's come back to me and it says, hey, there's an occurrence of Jessica over at John Public School. Is this the student you want to enroll? And you get to choose one of the 3 options down below. Now what'll help even is you can be like, well, I don't know if this is the same Jessica. So you can double click or see the details on this record that's over at John Public School. So it even shows their address and their parents and such. And you look at it and you go, hey, yeah, that is the Jessica that's trying to enroll at my school. So what you say then, if it is the one you want, you say, accept and enroll this student from the other school. What that'll do is you'll be the concurrent holder. You'll have to call John Public School and say, hey, Jessica's on my doorstep. She's going to enroll here for the fall. You need to retire her at the July 1st from your school because she's not returning to you. So that's how that works. And it basically just, if I enroll her, it transfers her record. And I don't want to check for siblings. That's fine. So now you see it's her record. It's the same record with all the details in it, but I'm not the home school. Home school says no. And it won't be until I go over to the other school and I release her over there that she'll be changed over to being homeschool for me. Now, if it wasn't the match that I wanted, the other choice in the 3 little choices was to enroll her as a new student. So if it wasn't this student and I go, no, this isn't the same student at all, based on what she's telling me, then I would choose the second radial dot down and I would say enroll as a new student, and then they'd start to fill in the information just like it was a brand new student. So I'll close from here. What'll happen, let's just follow this through. This is her record over at the elementary school. I still had it open, so I'm hoping I'm not confusing you. Here she's homeschool, yes. So you give them that call. They go in at the homeschool at John Public, and they retire her. So they mark her as deleted retired as of, I'll mark her as deleted retired the end. See, my calendar is not quite ready. So I'll retire her, let's say I retire her June 1st. And I know her number is not valid. That's fine. And now, oh, we have to give her a reason. That's okay, yeah, I want to save it with an OEN. Okay, so she's a concurrent student at another school. The other school's record will become the student's home school, and that's exactly what we wanted to have happen. Because she's over there at another school. She's sitting at our school as no now at the elementary school because we don't own her. Her retirement date has passed, which is why when I go over to her record at the secondary school and I look her up, it will have changed her to being my homeschool because she's enrolled with us as of 2013 and I retired her as of 2011 back in the other school. So that's why I can own her, because I retired her I enrolled her after they retired her. Okay? So it all happens behind the scenes. And that's what they have to do if they look at a student's record at the, let's say at the high school, and they find that they're still concurrent, but they should be starting with them. They can contact the school that's the home school and have that school retire them if they are supposed to be done there. That's how you fix it. Yeah. No, quite all right.
Is there a tab for OSR records? So, you know, when the OSR was requested or when it was sent, where it went, that kind of thing?
There is, and I'm not sure how many of your schools are using it. It's always been there. It was there before as well, but on the enrollment tab, you can actually fill in. If you look down here at the bottom, you can say when it was requested, when it was received, or when it was sent. So if I edit that enrollment, it's on the Other Fields tab, and that's where they can fill that in. Now this, the student is considered concurrent. That will be changed when the system is they're released over at the home school. Other than that, there's no changes to the enrollment tab or the Other Fields tab. It's just the whole idea of releasing and owning students now because it's one student record, not multiple. Yes. Yes.
Secondary students that change schools.
Okay.
It seriously affects the material submission for literacy that happens at that time too.
Yeah.
And would affect attendance or things like that at the new school. They could release them and still finish up reporting.
If they release them, they will still be able to. Now they can't do the attendance anymore because attendance would be based on the timetable. Oh, totally, totally. No, they would still have access to all of that. They would still be able to update the history. They'd still be able to, if that was a school where they wrote the test or whatever, if they needed to put in the OSSLC, then they could.
Then there's no reason that they need to hold on to that student. They can allow them to release it so that the attendance and things like that can start in the second semester.
That's right. Yep, because they can still finish up anything that they had on the student for the first semester while the other school owns the student, and that really all you're changing is who can edit the contact information and who owns the OSR.
Okay, great.
That's essentially what you're changing.
Thank you.
No problem. Hopefully you'll find, and I know I've found this with other schools, it makes it a lot less problematic now because multiple schools aren't owning the student at the same time. Alrighty, so that's in a nutshell the basics of what you'll see that's new from the school side of the features with MapleWood. So I'm going to conclude our session with the schools here today, and I'll stay on with the central office people that are also attending this session live today, and we'll go over some of the things of what can be done at central office. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you contact your contacts at the board office, and they'll be sure to help you through with it. Thank you for taking your time to watch and listen to the session today. I hope you found it beneficial.